What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be talking about something I've actually wanted to talk about for a very long time, okay? I'm talking like all the way back when I released the Zoro Conquerors hockey video, okay? That kind of time, like pretty much the very beginning of this channel. This is something I've wanted to talk about, something some of my one in particular friends have been trying to get me to do, and I think it's kind of important. So yes, I'm sure you can tell by the thumbnail and the title, I'm going to be talking about how strong Buggy the Clown is, okay? And the reason that I've wanted to do this for so long, but I never really got around to it, is because, well, I wanted to do it early on because it seems like an important topic, something kind of interesting that a lot of people don't even think about, but I kind of just forgot about it because I had all these new ideas coming and whatnot, and just a lot of people made suggestions, all that kind of stuff, versus battles, you know, there's just so much going on. But because of my most recent video, the one where I sorted out who I think are the strongest characters, a lot of people were confused by how I was placing Buggy a lot of the time, and honestly I kind of am too, because I don't really know where to place him. That's kind of going to be the big topic of this video, but I do consider him to be a lot stronger than we saw him at the beginning of the series, even pretty much when he was in Impelled Down, so I think there's a lot to discuss here. So now, of course, the big reason that most people just assume that he is super weak, and I cannot really blame them for doing so in the slightest, is because he was pretty much the first kind of important antagonist in the series. Of course, you could count Elvita, and she could even be more important because she really is the first antagonist of the series. But I would say, like, as an antagonist who is relevant for more than like one or two chapters, you know, I mean, there's kind of a like mini arc. I wouldn't even really call it mini at the time. The arcs were a lot smaller back then, where he was like the main guy, the main problem. He even had a small crew that different members of the crew for the Straw Hats had to face. It was kind of like just a real arc. And of course, as we all know, Luffy pretty much destroyed him despite being the weakest we've ever seen him in the entire series besides in flashbacks, so it's kind of easy to assume that he's not that powerful at all, really, despite having a pretty overpowered Devil Fruit. I mean, at least I would say so. Here's the thing, though. I think that there is more than ample reason for him to not have really taken the fight so seriously at all. I think pretty much every time he interacts with Luffy, there is more than enough reason for him to not take it very seriously, to pretty much be trolling the whole time. Now, I know a lot of people who are upset by my Kizaru video. If you are still here, if you're watching this video, you're probably pretty upset by this because I made the claim that, you know, Kizaru would never just be trolling, especially in specific serious situations like letting Luffy escape because of Ben Beckman. I believe that would never happen. It's completely ridiculous. He'd be fired. It just does not make any fucking sense. But I am saying that it's very possible that Buggy was completely pretty much allowing Luffy to do all these things, even when he was about to kill him with pretty much like a guillotine setup, okay? I'm not really sure what entirely was going on there, but I think the majority of the time he's not really taking anything so seriously. The big difference between Kizaru and Buggy really in these situations is that Kizaru has no real reason to be doing any of this, just besides the fact that, I guess, he's an idiot, but the thing is, he's really not an idiot. He just kind of is a weird guy. I don't think he really has any reason to be trolling people when it kind of could change the fate of the world and would threaten his position in the government. But Buggy, on the other hand, here's what I think, okay? He was a member of Roger's crew. We all know this. He was pretty much best friends with Shanks. I mean, they kind of like had a rivalry, disliked each other to an extent. They were kind of polar opposites in a lot of ways, but they were around the same age, I guess, and they were like cabin boys. They were pretty much buddies compared to everyone else. So there's a lot of reason to believe that there's no way that he is just super weak. And because he was on this ship, he is more than aware that that straw hat used to be Roger's, and then that it was eventually passed on to Shanks. And he even spoke about, made comments on Luffy's straw hat in the beginning of the series. So he more than recognized that it was Shanks' hat. They even had a discussion about it at one point. And I think that this is the point where Buggy was like, well, okay, I'm in. I'm not going to kill this guy, of course. I'm just going to have some fun with him. I'm maybe going to be like an opponent where he could get stronger against. And in terms of the plot issues with him being strong, I think that's pretty much my whole argument for it. I mean, I think it's completely reasonable that he more than recognized that Luffy was somehow connected to Shanks. Shanks must have liked him. Luffy, of course, did not steal Shanks' straw hat. Okay, I mean, that'd be ridiculous. Shanks was an emperor at the time. He realizes that Shanks must have some kind of trust, faith in Luffy, and he's like, okay, so I'm going to use myself as a way to make Luffy stronger. I'm going to do Shanks a favor. I'm going to get this guy to have a decent opponent, match up well against him. And while it wasn't like a completely super intense fight like all of Luffy's final battles at the end of every arc, I mean, it was the very beginning of the series. It seemed pretty reasonable at the time. This was like, I believe, the first or second devil fruit we'd seen besides Luffy's. I don't know if Alvida had it at the time. I think she only had it in Logtown, right? So I think this might have been like the first devil fruit besides Luffy's that we had seen. So it was very cool because we thought like, wow, this guy's super powerful. He even had this devil fruit, which I still consider to be very powerful. I wonder like what would happen if Zoro faced Buggy. Even if Zoro was using Haki, would that affect the Devil Fruit? And really, besides the whole plot thing where he could just realize that Luffy's connected to Shanks, wants to help him out in some way, you have to consider exactly that. His Devil Fruit is super OP. We do not know exactly what the limitations are on it, but I think it is fair to assume that pretty much any swordsman would be highly countered by him. I don't see how Haki would have any effect. I don't know how that would, prevent his Devil Fruit from working, since it just splits anytime he really is sharply cut, I guess. And here's an interesting thing. Depending on what the limitations are of this fruit, if he was able to divide at a molecular level, he would pretty much be invincible. I don't know what this would take. I don't know if he would have to actively be like moving all of his atoms separately. Like that would be a little crazy, I suppose. But I mean, at some point when his body is split, like where the two pieces connect, that is at a molecular level. So it's possible that really, no matter almost any type of projectile that's coming towards him, even if he got shot by like a bullet, he could theoretically not take any damage from it because of this Devil Fruit, depending exactly on how it works. I think it's super overpowered, and it would honestly be kind of ridiculous if he wasn't super strong because of it, because this Devil Fruit is so powerful. I mean, the only person I think who has like a Devil Fruit that is really like on such an OP level like this that is really just not strong at all, actually, it was completely utility, is Sugar. I've talked about this before. A lot of people say she has the most overpowered Devil Fruit in the entire series. And I mean, I guess that's true. I don't like to believe it, but it is kind of true. All she has to do is touch someone, and not just are they completely gone and it screws over everyone that person ever knew, but I mean, then they get that thing as a slave. Like, that's pretty crazy. It's pretty overpowered fruit. All she has to do is touch people to make this happen. So if this was in the hands of someone like Luffy or Sanji, somebody super fast, Brook, this would just be unbelievable. It would be ridiculously overpowered fruit. And I think Buggy's might not be quite on that level because that is fucking insane. But he could theoretically be like completely invincible, at least to any like projectile, I suppose. I mean, as we saw, he took a lot of damage from a lightning bolt, which is completely reasonable. That makes sense. That's perfectly logical. And that might even be an interesting point that Oda was trying to make. Like, it was the perfect way to actually stop Buggy from doing anything to Luffy. And in response to what happened in Logtown with how Buggy was pretty much just inches away from killing Luffy, this may seem a little far-fetched. This may be me kind of, stretching out this theory. It might really seem like there's just no way that Buggy wants to help Luffy in any way, shape, or form. But there are a few possibilities for what could have been going on there. I think maybe the best one is, I mean, if Buggy really was a member of Roger's ship, he was with Roger all the time, he'd seen all the shit that happens with this guy, the D's, and whatnot, he might have actually wanted to test the power. He wanted to see if Luffy really was worthy of becoming the Pirate King, since he had claimed it multiple times at this point. And he just wanted to see what would happen if he was to be in a near-death situation like this. And, well, if that's what he was trying to do, clearly it was delivered. I mean, I just think that I mean, I understand that does seem a little far-fetched. I'm really kind of stretching it. I'm kind of, It seems like I'm desperately trying to hang on to my own theory, but I mean, I actually don't think that that is completely unbelievable. I'm not saying like, oh yeah, that's that's what it is. I'm just saying I could see that, and there are a few other things I could see, just like, I don't know, maybe he wanted to try and test the abilities of the Straw Hats. He wanted to see if they could save Luffy, their captain. So maybe at some point he would have stopped himself. You know, I don't know. I don't know. But I do have a hard time believing that he really would have just killed Luffy despite knowing that he was wearing Shanks and Roger's hat. That does seem even more far-fetched to me, really. So yeah, that's pretty much what I think is going on with Buggy. That's kind of why I placed him weirdly against different people. I feel like he actually is going to end up being pretty powerful. He is a warlord now. I know the reason he became a warlord was because he had all these strong people from Impelled Down. But, I mean, it has been like a ridiculous amount of time. Sure, he could just keep getting lucky, I guess, but I feel like he has to be able to prove his strength in some way, shape, or form to them to actually be able to maintain the ship, to stay as the captain. So, I think he has some kind of tricks up his sleeve. I think it's definitely possible that he's a lot stronger than people have anticipated up until this point. I'm sure in the next few years we'll learn a lot more about Buggy. We're going to have more of a confirmation on his actual power levels. For now, if you were upset with how I placed him in that poll thing I did, I mean, I really didn't even know what I was doing with Buggy. I don't know how to answer Buggy, so just pretty much ignore his placement or whatever. Yeah, I think he's going to be strong. I just not exactly sure how strong. If you enjoyed this video, remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Remember to leave me a comment letting me know what you thought about this video, if you think that this is a completely ridiculous idea, or if it's kind of reasonable. You think that you could see that Buggy is stronger, whatever. Leave me a comment letting me know what ideas you want to see in future videos, maybe some theories you have that you'd like to have me take a look at and whatnot. Whatever, different shows, whatever, it's all good. Just leave me a comment. Thank you so much for watching. If you've made it this far, I hope you guys have an excellent day, and I'll talk to you on Friday.